My name is Marina Calloway, and if I ever doubted where I stood in my family, that doubt died the moment I found the will. It wasn't some dramatic confrontation, no family meeting around a creaky old table with tears and hugs. No, it happened by accident. Quiet, cold, and sharp. I was home for the weekend, helping my dad sort through a pile of overdue paperwork. Property taxes, utility bills, the usual chaos they never managed to handle themselves. I had done this a dozen times before, organizing their files, paying bills online, sometimes even footing the cost when they forgot. It was just routine. Until I saw the envelope. Estate, plan, last will and testament. It wasn't hidden, it was just there. In the stack, staring back at me like it knew what it held. I shouldn't have opened it. I told myself that, but I did. And what I saw? It hollowed me out. The house, the savings, the land, everything was being left to my sister Lena. Me? Not even a sentence, just a generic line about loving both daughters equally. Equally, as if the daughter who paid the mortgage and fixed the broken water heater was the same as the one who hadn't held a job in 6 years. My hands trembled. 5 years of sacrifice, gone in one document. I stared at the page, my chest tightening, the words blurring. That's when I knew. This wasn't an oversight. This was a choice. Looking back, the saddest part wasn't the will, it was how unsurprised I felt. Because the truth is, I'd been the one holding everything together for years, and they had never once treated it like anything special. When our mom retired early and money got tight, I didn't hesitate. I started sending monthly checks, just until things level out, even though they never did. When the roof leaked during a storm, I was the one who paid the contractor. When Dad's car broke down, I covered the repairs without being asked. I even sent Lena $1,000 once because she said her photography passion project hit a rough patch. She never paid me back. I didn't complain. I didn't expect a parade. But somewhere deep down, I thought, maybe hoped, that they saw me, that they appreciated me. Meanwhile, Lena floated from one half-baked dream to the next. Art school dropout, then a yoga certification that lasted 2 months, and now something about launching a wellness brand. She lived in the guest room for 2 years, contributed nothing, and still got praised for finding herself. Every holiday, my parents gushed over her sensitive spirit, while I washed the dishes alone. I was the dependable one, the fixer, the one they always called when something broke, needed money, or just felt overwhelming. I never said no, not once. And yet when it came time to write down who mattered, who truly counted, I wasn't even worth a mention. That's what broke me. I don't know how long I sat there staring at that will, the pages shaking slightly in my hand. I wasn't crying. I wasn't yelling. I just felt hollow, like someone had quietly scooped out the center of me and left the shell standing. When my dad walked back in, he didn't even notice at first. He was still holding his mug of coffee, asking about the tax documents. I didn't say anything. I just held up the folder. He paused, eyes narrowing as he registered what it was. "Where did you find that?" he asked, but not in a frantic way, more like someone caught leaving the back door open. I looked him straight in the eye. "So Lena gets everything." My voice was calm, which somehow made it worse. He rubbed the back of his neck and muttered, "It's not what you think." I let out a quiet laugh. "Really? Because it looks crystal clear to me." He didn't defend it. He didn't apologize. He just repeated, "It's complicated." That was his excuse, after everything. I waited, hoping he'd say more, something, anything, but he just stood there, eyes darting, waiting for this moment to blow over like all the others. I called for Mom, still clinging to the faintest hope that one of them might make it make sense. She walked in, saw the will, and her face dropped. "Marina, sweetheart, you don't need the inheritance. You're stable. Lena struggles. That was their defense. My success was the reason I didn't matter. For a second, I just stood there, staring at my mother like I didn't recognize her. Maybe I didn't. The woman who used to tell me I could be anything, who framed my college acceptance letter on the mantel, was now standing in front of me telling me I didn't deserve to be remembered, because I had managed to survive without their help. "You're stable," she said again, like it was some kind of punishment. I set the will down gently on the table, my fingers trembling not from rage, but from clarity. "Got it," I said, voice flat. Glad to know where I stand. My dad started to say something, probably another excuse, maybe even a weak attempt at comfort, but I didn't wait. I turned and walked out, each step feeling like it was peeling away a layer of something heavy I'd carried for too long. I didn't slam the door, I didn't make a scene, I just left. I didn't text, I didn't call, and for the first time in years, I didn't drop everything to fix their problem. The silence that followed was almost unnerving at first, like stepping into a cold lake. But then came the quiet relief, the knowledge that I had drawn a line. They had made their choice. Now I was making mine, and this time there would be no turning back. Not unless someone finally chose me for once, without conditions, without guilt, and without strings attached. 2 weeks. That's how long the silence lasted. At first, I'm sure they thought I was being dramatic, throwing some kind of adult tantrum. Maybe they figured I'd cool off, feel guilty, and come crawling back like I always did. But I didn't. I stayed quiet. I focused on work, walked by the ocean in the mornings, made meals for myself that no one criticized or picked apart. And just when the silence began to feel like peace, my phone buzzed. A text from Dad. "Property taxes are due. Can you take care of it?" No hello, no how are you, not even an ounce of acknowledgement about what had happened, just a request, as cold and casual as ordering takeout. I stared at it for a full minute, not sure whether to laugh or scream. That was the moment I realized nothing had changed. They still thought I was their fallback plan, their safety net, their walking checkbook. I typed back, "I'm sure Lena will handle it, since the house is hers and all." 5 minutes later, Mom called. I didn't pick up. Then a text, "Marina, please don't be like this. We need to talk." I waited, breathed, then replied, "There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice. Now you can live with it." I set the phone down, my hands steadier than they'd been in weeks. If they thought silence was uncomfortable, they were about to learn what real distance felt like. That night, just as I was settling into bed with the comfort of silence, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Lena. I hadn't heard from her directly in months, and I already knew it wasn't going to be anything good. Her message was short, dismissive, exactly what I expected. "Why are you making this such a big deal? Just help them out like you always do." I stared at the screen, stunned not by the message itself, but by how predictable it was. No apology, no acknowledgement, just the usual assumption that I'd pick up the slack. I replied, "No, I think you've got it covered." "You're the favorite, right?" Her response came quickly. "Oh my God, Marina, grow up. It's just money." My jaw clenched. Just money. That was rich, coming from someone who hadn't worked a single consistent job since her sophomore year of college. I typed back, "Then you won't mind using some of that inheritance to pay for the taxes." Silence. Not a single bubble appeared on the screen, and that told me everything. She wanted the rewards, the legacy, the house, the title of the cherished daughter, without any of the responsibility. She was all too happy to let me pay for everything as long as it meant she didn't have to lift a finger. But now that it was her turn to step up, suddenly it was not a big deal. That silence from her, it wasn't just avoidance. It was confirmation. She'd never planned on doing anything. I thought that would be the end of it, until the next morning, when I got a call from the front desk of my apartment building. Miss Calloway, your parents are here, and your sister." I blinked, disoriented. "What?" I asked, thinking I misheard. They say it's an emergency. They're asking to be let up. My stomach dropped. I hadn't told them where I lived, not recently anyway, but I guess Lena still had her ways. Please don't let them in, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. They're not expected. There was a pause, then the clerk added, they're being kind of insistent. I ended the call and rushed to the window, pulling back the curtain just enough to see them, my parents and Lena, standing outside the building like they were staging some kind of intervention. I barely had time to process before my phone buzzed again. Mom, we're downstairs. Open the door. No explanation, no apology, just another demand. Then, we're not leaving until you talk to us. I felt something inside me snap. They weren't just crossing a line now. They were stomping over it, daring me to stop them. I grabbed my keys and took the elevator down, heart pounding, jaw clenched. I wasn't afraid. I was furious. The moment the doors opened and I stepped outside, all three of them turned, expressions rehearsed. Mom's guilt, Dad's quiet disapproval, Lena's trademark boredom. They didn't come to talk. They came to corner me, and I was done playing the role they wrote for me. Marina, please, Mom began, already slipping into her signature performance. Soft voice, trembling hands, eyes that begged for sympathy. We need to talk. I didn't move from the doorway, arms crossed, feet planted, voice steady. No, you need to leave. Her face crumpled in confusion, like the words physically stung. Dad stepped forward, face tight. Are you really going to let us lose the house over a petty grudge? I let out a laugh, sharp and humorless. A grudge? You mean the part where I kept your bills paid, your lights on, and your fridge stocked while you wrote me out of your will? That part? His mouth tightened, but he said nothing. I turned to Lena, who'd been quiet, arms folded, sunglasses still on, like this was all beneath her. And you, I said, my tone cutting through the air. You didn't ask for the house, right? But you'll sure as hell keep it if it's handed to you. She rolled her eyes. I didn't do anything wrong. Exactly, I shot back. You never do anything, and yet you get everything. Mom stepped in again, voice rising. She's your sister. Don't make this ugly. I shook my head slowly. You made it ugly the second you decided the only child worth remembering was the one who never showed up. The silence was deafening. For the first time in my life, they weren't talking over me. They were listening. And I wasn't finished. I took a breath, slow and deliberate, then looked directly at Lena. You want to inherit the house? Start acting like the homeowner. Her jaw twitched. She opened her mouth to reply, but nothing came out. For once, she didn't have a snarky comeback or a deflection. I turned to my parents, eyes steady. You decided who mattered when you wrote that will. You didn't forget me. You chose to leave me out. And now you want me to fix the mess you created for the person you chose instead of me? Dad stepped forward again, his tone sharpened. We raised you. We gave you everything. I met his gaze without flinching. And I gave it back, tenfold. In time, in money, in everything you ever asked for. But you didn't want a daughter. You wanted an insurance policy. Mom's voice cracked. We thought you'd understand. I cut her off gently. I do. That's the problem. I understand exactly what I am to you. And now, I'm done. The words hung in the air, heavy and unmoving. I could see it land in their faces, in the way Dad clenched his jaw, how Mom's eyes welled up but didn't spill over, how Lena suddenly found the ground more interesting than me. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I just turned and walked away, back inside, back to my life, and as the door closed behind me, I felt something I hadn't in years. I thought that slamming the door, figuratively and literally, would be the end of it. But the thing about people who can't admit they're wrong, they don't back down. They go public. 2 days later, my inbox began buzzing with screenshots from mutual friends. At first, I didn't believe it. My parents had never been tech-savvy, barely able to post a birthday photo without asking me for help. But there they were, all over Facebook. Long, emotionally charged posts, disguised as family love, dripping with guilt and passive aggression. Mom wrote about the heartbreak of being abandoned by your own child, and how some people forget the meaning of family when money gets involved. The comments were full of sympathy from her church friends, former colleagues, people who didn't know a thing about the truth. So, sorry, Eleanor. You don't deserve this. Kids these days have no respect. Then came Dad's post, shorter, angrier. You raise them, sacrifice everything, and they repay you by turning their back when you need them most. And to top it off, Lena, of course, chimed in. Her post was a masterpiece of hypocrisy. Real family means sacrifice and love. Some people only care about control and status. No names mentioned, but they didn't need to. Everyone knew. The villain had been cast, and I was wearing the mask. I stared at my phone, pulse pounding. They weren't just twisting the story. They were rewriting it. And if they were going to take it public, so was I. I didn't rush. I waited. I sat with the anger, the disbelief, the ache of being portrayed as the villain in a story I had spent years holding together. Then, later that evening, I opened my laptop and logged into my personal Facebook, the one I rarely used, reserved for people who actually knew me. And I wrote, not out of rage, but with purpose. I wasn't going to sling mud. I was going to tell the truth, my truth. I began. I know some of you have seen recent posts from my family. I've stayed quiet because I wanted to take the high road. But silence allows lies to grow. So here's what really happened. I laid it all out. How I had supported my parents financially for years. How I covered bills, paid for repairs, helped Lena when her latest dream fell apart. How I gave and gave without ever being asked if I needed anything in return. And how, after all that, I discovered I had been written out of their will entirely. Not overlooked, I wrote, erased. I explained that setting boundaries wasn't abandonment, that refusing to be used wasn't cruelty, that love, real love, is mutual, not transactional. I ended it with this. I'm not cutting them off, I'm stepping out of a role I was never meant to play. I deserve to be seen, I deserve to be chosen, and I'm finally choosing myself. Then I hit post, and I felt the weight lift. The post spread faster than I expected. Messages started pouring in. Old friends, distant relatives, even a few of Mom's acquaintances who quietly offered their support. Some wrote just 2 words, thank you. Others poured out their own stories of silent sacrifices and invisible grief, like they had been waiting for someone to say it first. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. But my parents didn't take it quietly. Dad called, his voice sharp and furious. You've ruined everything, Marina. You'll regret this. I didn't even respond. I blocked his number. Then Mom tried, sending a flurry of guilt-laced texts. We're family. We raised you. You're punishing us. I blocked her too. Then Lena, of course, tried to twist the knife one last time. You're a traitor. You embarrassed us. Blocked. I shut every door, sealed every crack, and for the first time in my life there was no way for them to reach me. And it was quiet. I didn't realize how loud their needs, their expectations, their demands had been until they were gone. I could hear myself think again. I could wake up without dread clawing at my chest. I didn't owe anyone a response, a rescue, or an explanation. I had said what I needed to say. The rest, that was theirs to carry. I had my own life to live now, and for the first time, it belonged fully to me. It's been 3 months since I closed that door, literally and figuratively, and not once have I looked back. I moved to a smaller coastal town just 20 miles north, where no one knows my last name or my family history. I found a little house with peeling blue paint and wildflowers in the front yard. It's mine, paid for by me, maintained by me. It's not much, but every time I walk through the door, I feel safe. I feel free. I still get the occasional message from someone who just wants to help mend things. But I've learned something vital. Not every relationship deserves a second chance, especially the ones that never gave you a first one. I don't hate my parents. I don't even hate Lena, but I've accepted that love without respect is just manipulation wrapped in sentiment. I've stopped waiting for an apology, for recognition, for any validation that never came. I give that to myself now. I work, I rest, I laugh. I've started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. And sometimes, when the breeze rolls off the water just right, I feel like I'm finally breathing with my own lungs. This chapter of my life isn't about bitterness. It's about clarity, about choosing peace over obligation, love over guilt, me over them. And if anyone ever asks, was it hard cutting them off? I'll tell them this. What's harder is realizing you were never really accepted until you finally walked away, and I did, for good. Marina's story teaches us one of the hardest yet most liberating truths. Love is not obligation, and family is not ownership. For years, she gave her time, money, energy, and loyalty, believing that sacrifice would earn her place in her family. But when she discovered that her worth was invisible unless it came with a dollar sign, she made the bravest decision of all. She chose herself. The lesson here isn't about revenge or walking away in anger. It's about boundaries, about recognizing when love is conditional, when respect is one-sided, and when giving becomes exploitation. Marina's courage wasn't in speaking out. It was in finally stopping the cycle, in saying, "This ends with me." We're taught to put family first, but this story reminds us, family should never come at the cost of your self-worth. Choosing peace doesn't make you selfish. It makes you whole, and sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself, and even for them, is to walk away. In the end, Marina didn't lose her family. She found herself. And that, perhaps, is the most powerful kind of freedom.